Welcome to Connected Through Christ, a podcast where faith meets real life. Your host, Jeremy Johnson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Connected Through Christ. Today, we have a very special guest in the room with us. This guest happens to be family, and I want to welcome Miss Abigail Broussard.
Hi, I'm Abigail Broussard. I am 23. I'm from New Iberia, and like he said, I am family. So his wife is my nanny, my mom's sister. So he's kind of seen me through it all, through not saved, through saved, Abigail. So yeah.
So we're going to discuss a little bit about her past today. We're going to walk through a little bit of her life from her past. We're going to go into what God's doing for her today. So just stick with us and tune in, all right? So let's first talk about your past and tell us a little bit about who was Abigail before God.
Yeah, so before God, so I got saved around 2022. But before that, I was a hot mess. I was just broken, and I was depressed and anxious, and I had just lost my dad, so I was coping with that, trying to numb the pain of everything that I was feeling with drugs and alcohol and even like sexual immorality. So I was really looking for things to like numb the pain in all the wrong places pretty much. Until about 2022, whenever I met Jesus. So that's kind of how I was before Jesus. I was just addicted and broken.
And would you say you was like that through most of your childhood or most of your teenage years? Or
yeah, so you want me to just go into like my testimony?
Sure.
Okay. So growing up, I had a really good childhood, I would say. I grew up in the church. My mom was very involved in the church. My dad he wasn't really involved in the church, and he was addicted to alcohol. So growing up, seeing that was kind of rough. But seeing my mom like fight for God and fight to have a godly family, and like, no, I'm gonna change the trajectory of our family by like bringing us to church and stuff. I'm so thankful that I got to grow up with my mom, just being on fire for God. But growing up, yeah, we went to church. We were very involved in church. I feel like we spent a lot of our childhood in church.
were y'all Catholic or were y'all?
Yeah, we were Christian. So we went to First Assembly in New Iberia. And I would say I was very doubtful of who God was, and I don't know, it was just something that I couldn't understand. How can you believe in something that you can't see or feel? Or I didn't really know if I believed in God. I feel like I knew there was a higher power, but I didn't know what to do with that, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So I was very doubtful growing up. And I kind of like hated going to church. And I felt like it was almost forced on me. So, of course, being a human, we're like, we just want to do the opposite of what we're told to do, right?
Right.
So, growing up in church, being told to do X, Y, and Z, and be a good child and not sin, it kind of made me want to do those things even more, if that makes sense. So growing up in church, I mean, I saw what a walk with Christ was supposed to look like, but I didn't.
You saw two different sides, right? Because you said your mom was really strong. She was on fire for God. She was making sure that you were going to church. Your dad, on the other hand, wasn't in the same place. You know, he had an addiction and stuff. So it sounds like you got to see kind of both sides, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So my dad, I mean, that was scary at the same time. I feel like in my spirit I knew that God was real because I was genuinely scared for my dad's future, like his eternity. Yeah, because I was like, he doesn't go to church, he smokes, he's addicted to alcohol, And as a child, I mean, that's the worst thing that you could see. Like, your parent just kind of throw their life away to alcohol or even cigarettes, even though it's not that big of a deal now in our society. As a child growing up seeing that, it was like heartbreaking just to know that my dad might not go to heaven if he died. Or so yeah, so I saw both sides of that. I saw my dad not serve the Lord, and then my mom just be on fire for God. And that did cause a lot of like strife in their relationship, and they would have issues growing up. So that was also kind of hard to watch. Just seeing an unequally yoked couple, which is why it's really important to be equally yoked in a relationship. But yeah, so growing up in that house, you would think that because you go to church and all these things, you would never fall into sin or anything like that or be in bondage. But at some point in my childhood, I was exposed to pornography. And from there, I just kind of got addicted to it. And I didn't think it was wrong though. Honestly, I thought it was one of those things where like God gave us this gift. It's not a sin, but it was a sin, and that carried from my childhood up into my adult years, and I wasn't free from that until probably like the end of 2022. But
That was a thing for me too.
yeah,
Like I had seen pornography for the first time. I was in fourth grade,
really,
elementary school. And that was, from there on out, especially going through teenage years and stuff, it was just part of life.
yeah.
Even though it was wrong, it was part of who I was back then.
It's very normalized today too, and I think growing up dealing with that, especially in high school, was so normalized. And it's not talked about enough in girls. And I know so many women that have struggled with that, but it's not talked about enough. And I feel like everyone that goes through that is almost ashamed to talk about it, to talk about being delivered from that, because it's like, no, that's just something that guys deal with. Like, what's wrong with you? Why did you fall into that? But in high school, I mean, just guys, I mean, they were always talking about it, and it just felt very normalized. So I was like, it's okay. Like,
Yeah.
this isn't really sin. So that really carried into my adulthood.
And y'all, I just want to add to that too. If you know someone that is addicted to pornography, if you go back to our first episode with David Derby, David was actually an adult entertainment star, and he has a great testimony on pornography. So go check that out as well.
Yeah, so yeah, I kind of feel like I'm all over the place right now.
Okay.
So yeah, so I got addicted to pornography sometime early in my childhood years, and that carried into my adulthood. And I never realized that was sin or understood why it was wrong if it was wrong. So yeah, so I kind of dealt with that, and then as I grew up, other things started coming up where I wanted to be rebellious or I wanted to experiment. So around probably my end of middle school, beginning of high school, I was like, okay, I kind of want to like go to a party. So I started, I think, wait, yeah, it was high school, probably like freshman year. So I just started telling my mom that I was going to my friend's house and we were just gonna have a sleepover. But really I was going to party and get drunk. And then at some point I was exposed to marijuana, and that got a really big hold on me.
More so than drinking.
Yes.
Let me ask you this: when you were first getting hit with drinking, did at any point in time did that make you think of maybe like, your thoughts of your dad and his drinking and somehow relating that, or you like was nope?
Yeah, you would think it would. You would think growing up, seeing my dad being alcoholic, seeing my aunts and uncles go through the same thing, you would think that that would make you look at them and say, I'm not going to do that. But it wasn't even a thought in my mind whenever I was doing it. I just wanted to do what I wanted to do, and I wanted to figure out why my parents were telling me not to do
That sin has a
X, Y,
strong
and Z.
hold. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, and whenever you're in it, you can't see anything but what you want to see. So, while I was in that, I was like, I don't care what my parents say. Like, I just want to go have fun and experiment for myself and figure out why they say not to do this. So yeah, so I did drink a little bit. I never got like addicted to alcohol, I would say. I would just, if I was gonna drink, I was gonna get drunk.
Yeah.
There was no point in drinking if you weren't gonna
It
get
was
drunk.
here or here.
Yeah, yeah,
There's no in between.
yeah. So now I'll go back and see videos, and it's so embarrassing.
That unfortunately sounds like a lot of our family. I mean, I was the same way, other people in our family the same way. It's either here or here, and struggle for that middle ground,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. There's no balance. Yeah, so I struggled with that, partying and then weed. So eventually in my high school years, that kind of just kept progressing. I would do it more frequently. And around my junior year of high school, my dad got sick with cancer. And he had been sick a few times prior to that, like struggling for his life in the hospital from all the drinking that he did. Like his organs started failing, and he was in the hospital for a long time. We didn't think he was gonna make it, but he ended up making it through that. And then, a few months later, he starts having issues with his throat, and we find out that he has cancer. So it's kind of just a waiting game at that point of like, okay, like you have cancer, but some people make it through it, some people don't.
Right.
So it's just waiting and seeing, how bad it was. But eventually we found out that there was nothing that they could do. So it was just a waiting game of, okay, how long are you going to make it? Like, how long do we have with you? And at that point, it was like it's almost like grieving before they're even gone. So I don't know how to explain that. Like, I feel like I grieved more watching my dad like
slowly go through everything.
deteriorate
Right.
than I did after he died, if that makes sense.
It does.
Which there's
You're somewhat preparing, and you're
Yeah.
dealing with it.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was hard. So during that, I coped a lot with a lot of marijuana, a lot of smoking, just to numb that pain. But eventually, once my dad passed away, the marijuana wasn't enough. So that's when my whole family kind of fell away from God. We stopped going to church. I don't know if they were angry at God, but I was very angry at God for allowing my dad to die, because I remember like there was a point where he was, about to die. They were giving us like, okay, it'll be maybe 2 weeks before he dies. And I just remember sitting in my room and crying and saying, God, like, take me, don't take him, like, just let me die. And he didn't take me, he took my dad. So after that, I was so mad at God. I was like, I'm not following a God that's gonna let things like this happen to me or my family. Like, I don't want any part of this God that claims to be sovereign and love me, but he allows things like this to happen to me. So I turned my back on God. I did not like God for a long time. So we stopped going to church, and I was looking for ways to cope with what I was going through. So I, of course, was still smoking, but I got into a lot of like drugs, but not like crazy street drugs like heroin or anything. It was something as simple as going to the doctor and saying, like, I'm really depressed. What can you do?
Scripts.
Yeah, so he would prescribe me medicines. And first it started with antidepressants, and then it went further from there as the antidepressants didn't help. So at one point I was just on antidepressants and anxiety medication.
Yeah.
And then it was that, and then plus like a medicine called Ativan, which is a very strong drug.
Sure.
They use it for seizures, and I was just taking it like it was candy to numb myself. from all the pain. So there was a point in my life where I was literally a walking zombie. Like, my mom was so worried about me, because I was on so much medicine. And we all were, my whole family was. We were trying to cope with the death of my dad, and we didn't know where to look. So we were just all taking medicines, drinking, smoking. And yeah, eventually I moved out of my mom's house, moved in with my sisters, and from there it just got worse. And I just remember how, like, how much pain I was in, like, just internally, and there was nothing that was fixing that. No medicine, no drugs, nothing. It was numbing it, but
it's still there.
yeah,
It's
still
still
there.
there after.
Yeah, so
I can relate to, like, when my dad, before he died and he had his first heart attack, that was the first time I had someone close to me that I felt like I'm gonna lose them. And I was so angry that I literally, I mean, I remember turning around. My dad was still having a heart attack. At the time, I was a medic, couldn't do anything for him. I don't have any equipment. And it was just a hopeless feeling. And I remember just being so angry at that point. And, you know, of course, Acadian shows up, sheriff's office shows up. They start working on him. And immediately when I got off of focus of him, I'm like, I can't believe God's doing this. And I just wanted to just drive my fist through the wall, you know, that type of anger. And even, you know, when he finally passed a year and a half ago, the day it happened, even while he was still alive and he was at the hospital, I just felt it and knew like this is going to be it. And I was just intense. I was angry, you know, and I guess that's some ways that some people deal with that, you know. Not saying it's right, but I can relate for sure.
yeah, yeah, I was angry at God for sure for a long time. But yeah, so
After you got to your sisters and you finally moved in, I know you said it kind of went from bad to worse, right? You know, I don't even want to know,
Yeah,
but so it goes from bad to worse. But what, you know, what ultimately was it that got you from, you know, living that life of sin and all the things that come with it, being depressed and sad and angry and, you know, being wrapped up in some things and you don't even realize.
right.
What was it that got your attention to look the other way?
Yeah, so once I moved into my sister's house, I was still in bondage. And at that point I was also coping by like finding different men to sleep with. And I don't know, something in my spirit knew there was something more, so I started to look for something more. But I did not want to go to God. So
you thought God, but you're like, no, it can't be at that point.
yeah, I was like, I don't want to go back to church.
Okay.
So in today's age, witchcraft and
I was going to ask you, did you search for other religions or other?
yes.
Yeah.
So, just through social media, I found out about, you know, meditation and the healing properties of that. So I started meditating.
Right.
And then I kind of got into, like reading books on your chakras and all the healing, all the things
Your
that can be healed by that. Yes, your vibrations, the crystals, the tarot cards. I got into all of that, the sage, the incense.
Yeah.
I was looking for something, and I just remember I would like meditate and I would do this, or I would get a tarot card reading, and none of it was doing anything that I wanted it to do. So
was there any bad from it, any good from it? Did you feel anything or any in the back of your head, like, I know I should probably go to God, but,
yeah,
or no?
it felt wrong in my spirit the
did.
whole time. Yeah. But it looked pretty online, and that's where the world is right now. It's so like glamorized, witchcraft, and they like to hide it by like it's just cards, or it's just
Yeah, sure.
you know,
Absolutely.
So it felt wrong in my spirit for sure, but I was like, maybe if I just go a little deeper, I'll feel something. So at this point, my mom started going back to church, and she started inviting me. And like prior to this, she was really concerned about me because I was just going from bad to worse. You know, she was really concerned that I was going to overdose.
Yeah.
And Yeah.
We all were.
Yeah, it was bad. There was a point where I pulled all my eyelashes and eyebrows out, pulled my hair out. It was a mental battle. And so she got me in with a counselor and we tried that. That didn't work. So I was like, okay, what now? So she starts inviting me to church and I was like, I'm not going. Like, absolutely not. So she kept inviting me and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go and shut her up.
So that ultimately was the
Yeah.
first motivation for going was
Just to
mom.
shut.
So it worked. It worked.
Yeah, it did work. So
Yeah.
invite your kids to church. Yeah, so she kept inviting me, so I was like, okay, I'll go. So I went, and I believe this was my first time going back to church. And I remember during worship, I had an encounter with God, and I don't know, it felt like I was home. I don't know how else to describe it. I guess because I had grown up in church and
Felt that.
yes,
For sure.
it was like,
Yeah.
and I remember feeling the presence of God so thick in the room. It literally felt like heaven was in the room. And I was like, I've never felt something like this before, but this is what I've been looking for in meditation and all the spiritual things that I was trying to do. And I just remember in that service, like weeping because it felt like I was home. And then I looked over and my little sister was worshiping her heart out. And I was like, I want that. Like she had such a strong relationship with God. And I was like, I'm the older sister. I'm supposed to be the one that's like setting an example for her. But I looked at her and the way that she was just pouring her heart out to God, I was like, I want what she has because she has a relationship with God. So that kind of like motivated me to start asking questions and figuring out why we believe what we believe. So I kept going to church and God kept meeting me where I was. And I remember going home and I was like, okay, I'm gonna read my Bible. I've never read my Bible before. So I started in the beginning. And I was like, I was so amazed at everything in the Bible. I just remember I was like, this was all here this whole time,
Yeah.
and I didn't know that it was here.
So you hadn't really read before?
No, I had
Okay.
never read the Bible. No.
Okay.
Even growing up in the church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
No. So it was, I mean, you grow up in kids' church and you taught all these things, but I feel like once you get saved for your own self, you have to kind of relearn everything you've ever been taught and figure out, okay, like, why do I believe this? You know?
Yeah.
So I got saved in 2022 and God just encountered me and radically changed my life. And I was like, okay, it's time to do the next step. We're going to get baptized. So I got baptized. And then eventually God led us to First Assembly in Youngsville. And at this point, I was kind of still dealing with like a little bit of anxiety and depression. And I was still in bondage with pornography. And I hadn't really been convicted of that yet.
But things were slowly kind of moving the other direction.
Yeah,
at
it
this
was
point.
like step by step. Yep. So we went to First Assembly, and one night, we had a guest speaker, Pastor Joseph Muenya. I don't know if y'all remember him, but oh my gosh, that night he had an altar call for anxiety and depression, and I swear I went up and like he laid hands on me, and that night that was it. Like no more anxiety, no more depression, and then eventually God started to convict my heart about pornography. So I was like, okay, let me look into this. Like, is this actually wrong? Or like, is it right? Is
You know,
it
it's
good for
crazy.
God?
You can actually look online and there's things that'll tell you it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can find it if you want. If you really want to think it's okay, you can find those reasons. You know,
Yeah.
that's what's crazy too.
Yeah. So God started convicting me of that. And I remember reading something that talked about like the stronghold of pornography and how it's literally a demon. Like,
yeah.
And every time you give into that sin, you're just feeding it and making it stronger. And I was like, okay, like I gotta stop doing this, or it's just gonna have a stronghold on me for even longer. And I think that was harder to overcome than like any drug I've ever had to get out of. Like pornography was harder to defeat than anything else. But I remember in church one week, someone went up and gave like 5-minute message on the Bible verse that week. And it was the verse, no temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will never let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. I was like, wow. I was like, I didn't know that was in the Bible.
Yeah.
I didn't know that Jesus literally says that whenever we're tempted, he's like, you just call on his name and he's there for you and he'll get you out of that temptation. And that nothing is too strong to overtake you. Like nothing's forcing you to sin. At the end of the day, you have the choice to sin or to not sin. So once I realized that, every time I was tempted with that, I would just like say that verse to the devil. I'd be like, nope, no temptation has overtaken me. God is faithful. I'm like, Jesus, help me.
Yeah.
And I mean, over time, it took months. I had dreams that I would fall back into it and I'd wake up feeling so guilty. But it took months to get fully like free from that, even though I wasn't actively doing it, to get free from the dreams and the temptations.
Or the temptation of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that,
That's
I mean,
powerful.
yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
And I mean, it goes to show too, like it could be one addiction of pornography, it could be alcohol, it could be drugs, all these things have strongholds on people. And it's a choice, no doubt, but there's also tools that we have from God to be able to help us to get through those things.
Oh yeah.
Like prayer, or
Yeah.
like speaking to others in the church that can help us. There's different things to do. And sometimes we don't utilize those things enough, I know we both went through theology of prayer this past semester in seminary. And one thing for me that I got from it was, I think I used prayer for the most part of my life as a defense. I used it as a last resort, as a 911, like genie in a bottle, rabbit's foot, that kind of scenario. Like, when you hear people say like, well, I guess all we can do is pray now, or let's just leave it in God's hands, because they're at that point where there's nothing else. And that was kind of me, like with my prayer life. And I think going through this class, it showed me like, no, prayer is powerful. It could be used as a tool, no matter if it's for temptation,
Right.
or use it as an offense, as a weapon. And that was a big thing that I took away from that this semester. And, my prayer life has definitely excelled from it. Like, I'm constantly praying. I pray all the time over this house, my family, y'all, everything. And I don't just pray like to ask God for anything. I'm praying, thanking God for so much.
Yeah.
Because we're so blessed.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah, gratitude is so powerful.
Absolutely.
God.
So that was good. So let me ask you this. So, hearing all of that is definitely, it's a testimony. You went through some tests, you have your testimony, and like some people say, your mess can be your message, right?
Right.
So
Yep.
What is God doing for you today?
Yeah, so today, God is just, he's using me in ways I never thought he would use me in. But in 2023, I was praying and I was like, God, what am I on this earth for? What do you want me to do here? And I remember one night we were just fasting and praying at church, and I was like, God, just speak to me, just give me a word. And he gave me 3 words. He gave me missions, evangelism, and mental health. And he was like, that's your calling. And I was like, okay. So I didn't know what to do with that. So after prayer, Pastor Joe kind of was like, okay, if God spoke to you, come up and tell us what God spoke to you so that we can pray for you. And I remember my mom turned to me and she said, I feel like God's going to call you to missions. And I was like, that's crazy, because God just kind of told me the same thing.
And we kind of felt the same thing too. We felt like missions was the same thing.
The next day, my mom told me you called her.
Yeah.
And you said, I feel like Abigail's called to the mission field.
Right.
And I was like, okay, God. Yeah. So from there, I was like, okay, let me pray into this. I don't know what to do with this. I don't feel qualified to go and preach the gospel to people. I was still a baby Christian. I still am a baby Christian, but but at that time I was a baby Christian. So a few months after that, God called me to go to seminary, and I just took a step of faith and went to seminary. And then around December of 2023, God opened a door for me to join a missions team called Compassion for International. And at the time, it felt like it was God, and I was crying and weeping because I knew that God was telling me to do this, but I told them no because I was scared to quit my job. I was scared to leave everything and go. And so I was like, okay, 2024, I'm gonna spend this year praying and fasting and seeing if God wants me to do this, like go with this ministry and do missions for the next year. So I had been praying this whole year, and we went on a trip to the Dominican Republic for missions. And on this trip, God just confirmed even more that this is what I'm called to do, and that He's gonna call me somewhere eventually, whether it's to another country or it's to do missions in America. So I started praying, God, give me confirmation within like the next few weeks. And after our missions trip, we had a missions banquet at our church. And whenever I walked into the building, the leader of the ministry that reached out to me was in the front. And I was like, okay, God. I was like, okay, this is crazy. I'm not going to talk to him. Like, no.
Yeah.
So I go throughout my night, and at the end of the night, he comes up to me and he's like, hey, can I talk to you? And I was like, sure. I was like, hey, Pastor Anthony, I've been meaning to come talk to you. And he was kind of confused. He was like, what? And then he goes, I don't know who you are, but I feel like God just told me to come talk to you and tell me to offer you the internship to come with us on Compassion Corps International. And I was like, okay. I was like, that's my confirmation.
Yeah.
So
Talk
that,
about a confirmation.
yeah, that gave me a few weeks to quit my job and pack up everything and move to New Orleans. So I joined Compassion Corps International, which is a ministry that's based in New Orleans. It's led by Pastor Anthony Freeman. So Pastor Anthony Freeman oversees all the missionaries, all the U.S. missionaries, like in America. So he has connections in pretty much every state.
Wow.
With a missionary. Yeah.
It's pretty bad.
So yeah. So his call from God is to equip young people to go out and make disciples, to be missionaries, whether it's in America, whether it's in another country. He's just dedicated to training and equipping them and discipling them. So you can do a 10-month internship or a 2-year internship. So right now I'm on the like 1-year track of like the CCI internship. So I joined them in August, and it's been crazy. We've done so much ministry.
I know I've seen you on Azusa Street.
Yeah.
I've seen you, looks like in the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
You know, I hate to say it, I was jealous, but you know, it's like, look where she's at. She's all over the place.
So within the last 2 months, I've been to 7 or 8 different states.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
So everywhere we go, we make a connection with a missionary, and then we do missions work in that town or that state wherever we go. So the most impactful one for me was probably Philadelphia.
Okay.
So we went to Philadelphia, and it's called the Philly Dream Center. So they have like discipleship homes for people in addiction. But I don't know if you've ever heard of Kensington Avenue.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
Isn't that kind of like Skid Row, the drugs and
yeah. Yeah. So out there on Kensington Avenue, it's crazy. There's like lines and lines of people just like slumped over, high on drugs. There's open needles all over the ground. And then these people are reusing needles, so their arms are like swollen,
infections
infected, and yeah, it's a mission field out there. So that was the most impactful. But on a weekly basis, we're doing ministry, whether it's in a church or street evangelism or just helping missionaries. I mean, missions is not like, it doesn't look like what I thought it would look like. I don't know what I thought it would look like.
So you didn't have like a preconceived of what you thought?
I did.
Like
I thought it was just going to be Jesus and travel and fun, and it's not.
It's work.
It's
right?
work.
Yeah.
Whether it's like painting a church or doing things that you don't want to, like, most people are like, that's not missions work, but it really is, because you're just serving people in the kingdom at the end of the day.
Right. I think people are mission minded to the point of where their perception is they have a Bible in their hand, they're in another country, and they're trying to get somebody to come on Team Jesus, right?
Yeah.
But like you said, and I think you just hit it on the head, mission trip is really serving.
Yeah.
It's servitude of any form, right?
Right.
Of dealing with furthering the gospel or helping a church, or
Yeah.
it could be a number of things.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's been the most surprising thing to me, I think. It's just it does not look like anything that I thought it would. But in the best way.
Right.
It's like stretching and it's growing and it's discipleship. And I've also realized that no one's gonna feel called to missions and God's just gonna send them to another country. It's like you have to start somewhere and learn. I feel like anywhere in the church, if you're called to ministry, you have to kind of start at the bottom, whether it's scrubbing toilets or doing anything. You kind of have to show God that you have a servant heart first and foremost, and then he'll
You start off in the
elevate.
little things, right?
Yeah.
And gradually,
Yeah.
with obedience,
Right.
and doing the right things, he trusts you with bigger things. Or yeah, absolutely, that's a good point. So let me ask you this: what where do you feel, or what do you feel is next for Abigail with this?
I know God's gonna send me somewhere, and it's not
Overseas.
I feel it. I don't know if it's overseas. It could be in America because
There's a lot.
y'all, like people want to go overseas so bad, and that's important. People, I mean, we need missionaries out there as much as we do here, but there are like 100 unreached people in Africa, okay? But there are 600 unreached people groups in America.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we have such a big mission field here. It's like
Our backyard.
Yeah, New Iberia, Lafayette, everywhere is a mission field. So I don't know where God's gonna send me, but I know wherever He does send me, I'm like, it's okay. He's gonna use me. There's people that need Jesus everywhere. So
we agree with that.
Yeah. My ultimate goal though is to go to South America.
Okay.
And I want to be in the Amazon rainforest. I want to minister to like an uncontacted tribe somewhere. That's really like where my heart is. But again, I don't know where God will send me. Yeah. And I know He put that there for a reason, but
absolutely.
Yeah, so we'll see what God sends me. Yeah.
Very, very awesome. So let me ask you this. If you had someone, especially, with missions and not to say, the work part aside, if you had someone right now that you were speaking to and maybe they were lukewarm, or maybe they were struggling to make that commitment to God because maybe they got hurt in the past, or maybe something tragic happened, but for whatever reason, they're struggling to get back, or they're struggling to make that decision to live for God. What's some of the best advice you could give to someone in that?
Yeah. Well, first, I feel like if you're lukewarm or have hesitancy, there's obviously some doubt there of if you should fully give your life to God or not. And I mean, for me, the biggest thing the most revelatory thing I think that helped me was realizing that God is not scared of my doubt. He's not scared of my questions. And at the end of the day, you can just go to God and ask Him yourself. So I think
He's personable.
Seeking God, yeah.
He's personable.
He is personable. He understands you, like He made you in His image. So
and He wants a relationship with us.
Yeah, right? He does.
And it's I think sometimes we can complicate God, right? And I think you just said it, and it hit me like He's personable.
Yeah.
Everyone, and I had even said it the other day, we were talking, and I was like, God wants a relationship with us. And I think a lot of people complicate even that. And in simple, if you look like this first person that you really may want to start to date and see where it goes. And so you want to have a relationship with that person. So you tend to want to spend time with that person. You want to get to know that person. You want to do things that make that person happy. And you don't want to do things that make them upset, right?
Yeah.
Simple things. And what's crazy is a lot of people don't look at their relationship with God that way.
Right.
And we should. So, we should get to know Him by reading His word, by prayer, right? Those are just some options. And you should want to make Him happy, living obediently, following the commandments, all of these things that we're we're taught to do. And at the same time, you know, don't do things making them upset, you know, the sin and the temptation. And I think sometimes we just complicate those things. That's
Oh
all.
yeah, we over spiritualize it so much. But at the end of the day, it's simple. All you have to do is stay connected to God. Like, I think it's John 15. It says he is the vine and we are the branches. And he cuts off any branch that bears no fruit, but the fruitful ones he prunes. So it's like, you just have to stay connected to the vine. Jesus is the vine. So I think if you just stay connected to Jesus, that's going to bring you everywhere you need to go at the end of the day. And just, I mean, he's not scared of anything. He's personable, like you said. He's not limited by space or time. He's sovereign. He understands you. He understands your questions before you even ask them. And he has an answer for everything. So it's so simple. Just seek him. Just ask him. Just pray to him. Ask him to convict you and show you where you need to grow or where you need to, you know, improve your prayer life maybe, or
This is.
yeah. So yeah, I think it's simple.
Well, great. Look, it was great having you. I'm so glad that you came. I was super excited having you on. And look, and it's been such a blessing. It really has, for us to be able to see you go from where you were and have certain worries or concerns to see where you are now. If you're jealous or something, because I'm like so excited and happy for you because of what you're doing. And it just is. It's amazing. God's doing the work in all of our family, you know, and we're so blessed. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you all for tuning in today for another episode of Connecting Through Christ. You can follow us on Facebook. You can follow us on YouTube, TikTok. I can't even keep up with the platform. I'm struggling. But stay tuned for more. We have more lessons coming up, and we've got some exciting news for some upcoming guests. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Connecting Through Christ. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Stay blessed and keep growing in Christ. See you next time.